Well, hello there, and I do hope you're all well. Now, yes, you remember yesterday's video. You remember this guy, the man with a magnificent plumage on his head. Yes, the man who looks like he's just whacked a dollop of golden syrup on his head. The Poundland Bodge lookalike, Mark Fabricant. Where yesterday's video where he decided to not only throw teachers and nurses under a bus, he accused them of, like everybody else after a 12-hour shift. They all went to the staff room for a knees up and got jolly trousered in the process. Not only throwing him under, but insulting them as well. Well, on Sky News, they decided to have him on again to have his thoughts on the Prime Minister being fined for breaking the rules. And let's just say it was rather interesting listening, not just because of his total loyalty to a complete and utter lying charlatan, but the way he treated the female presenter. I'm not so sure he'd do the same thing if the presenter was male, but let's have a watch and listen with interest.
I don't know whether it was okay as such, and that'll be decided by the Metropolitan Police, the Crown Prosecution Service, and of course Sue Gray, who is doing the investigation. But what I think is important to understand that it was done under sort of COVID conditions. And let me explain what I mean by that. In Downing Street, there are over 100 pokey little offices. And you had...
Here we go now, he's trying to present 10 Downing Street like a small little terrace house that we've all lived in, where there's not enough room to swing a cat in, and how this home is just too small. So, it's just quite breathtaking, the lengths he'll go to defend his fearless leader, the Bodge.
People in there working for over 18 hours, some of them a day, to try and procure vaccines. And
some of them working 18-hour days? No, I don't think so. I very much doubt it. I think that anybody who works 18 hours a day is practically near enough at death's door come the end of no chance. I'm not sure that's completely true.
And get the whole fight against COVID working. And then someone, as we know, invited people to go out into the garden. Now, the garden is an integral part of the Downing Street complex. It's a...
Now he's trying to justify being in the garden. Well, let's explain that to people who are living in high-rise flats when all you've got is a maisonette. Mark, explain this to them people, Mark.
Secure, so there would have been no mixing with outsiders whatsoever. And these were people, frankly, who'd been working incredibly hard and had already been mixing in closed and stuffy...
Said it, working incredibly hard on a number of times. Sorry, but my heart bleeds purple piss. Is he trying to say that nobody else works incredibly hard? Get over yourself.
Environments. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse, but what I am saying, it wasn't a risk in the sense of it spreading COVID because of the nature of the garden being so secure.
So you try to explain that it's a works meeting. Well, why was Cara Simons there? Why was the baby there? And why were they involved in making tough decisions for the country? I'd love to hear what the baby's thought were when it came to these rules and regulations then.
Secure.
Well, Michael, you've explained that very clearly, and perhaps if that is the thinking amongst the Conservative Party, that could have been explained clearly to the public at the time. Because when you talk about people working 18-hour days in close, unventilated conditions with access to perhaps an outside garden, and, this email went to 100 staff all working in the same building, I'm thinking of NHS workers in a hospital working in close surgical quarters on wards. What makes Downing Street staff okay to meet up in a garden outside their place of work and have drinks, and not okay for, say, A&E staff to do that after work?
Yes, no, I do understand that, and I do understand the anger. And can I also add, I understand the frustration and hurt. It will have caused people who had weddings postponed, people who couldn't attend funerals because of the numbers that were constrained.
Well, it's not just that. It's people who lost loved ones on that day. We spoke to Lindsay Jackson, who on the 20th of May, that was the last day her mum was alive. She didn't get to say a proper goodbye. And she said, you know what? I enjoyed the lovely weather that day in the garden on my own, as per the rules. She wasn't even allowed to hug her brother in the garden. So with respect, I don't think that some MPs are understanding the frustration and anger. If you're going to come out and excuse people after working in an office in lovely conditions in Downing Street, quite frankly, they could go out in the garden on their own at lunchtime and have a sandwich in the sunshine. You're not getting it if you're explaining it like that. How would you explain that to Lindsay Jackson or to your fellow MP Jim Shannon?
See, it's already starting now. The patronising. How patronising. Do you think he'd have said that to a male representative? I bet he wouldn't. He said, let me get a word in other words. You broke me in mid-flow of my utter diatribe of bollocks and nonsense and boot-kissing and arse-licking of the Bodge. So can you be quiet, young lady, or maybe get behind the kitchen again and do the ironing like most good ladies do. What a wanker.
Edgeways, so you're going to do a monologue?
Yes, of course. No, please do.
Yeah, thank you. No, I do understand it. My very best friend on Sunday said to me that this day, 12 months ago, I waved goodbye to my mother, who went off in an ambulance and then subsequently died of COVID. So yes, I do get it, but there is a difference, and I'm not making excuses. It could well be that Sue Gray says that people are guilty and heads will roll. But what I am saying is that the situations you've given me just now as good examples, and indeed the examples I gave, were all about mixing. It would have meant that different households who had not previously been together would have mixed. These are people who work in the same stuffy offices, and unlike the example...
In the same stuffy offices. You know, making it out as though they're working in some factory floor. The condescending, disgusting, vile little turd.
You gave, for example, of people working in A&E, there are no secure gardens with barbed wire fences
a better example
in hospitals.
A better example would be, for instance, in Downing Street, you can't tell me 100 people all work in close quarters. Presumably, Downing Street workers had to go into work but follow distancing rules within that office to the best of their ability. So they're segregated in a way. How can you go from 5 people working in an office and then going home to their loved ones as per the rule? How can you go from that to mixing with up to 100 people? Not all 100 people took up the invitation, but you see where I'm going with this. How can that be okay if you're trying to mitigate the risk in the building and then taking everyone outside? It was against the law because that was the scientific advice.
Now watch him patronise her again, as if to say, now will you be quiet, now the adult is speaking. Now, does your husband know you work in this job? Because quite frankly, I think you're a little out of your depth, dear. You should be in the kitchen making a nice, lovely roast.
Yes, well, let me explain, Sarah. You're right in what you ask. But, you know, I don't know whether you're familiar with the layout in Downing Street. First of all...
Yes, don't know if you're familiar with the layout of Downing Street, you know, as if to say, I'm better informed than you. You are just a mere lady. I'm an MP.
There are some very small, pokey offices, and you get people wandering from one
There again, porky little offices.
One office to another. Then you get larger rooms in number 12 where you have people working round desks. And yes, they will have tried to keep the 2 meters separate. But, you know, government is a very integrated thing. And it's not like a small A&E unit. You get a mixture between all of them. And the point that I'm simply making was that the risk of contagion is far greater in a building than going outside in a garden where people could not... Let me just finish. Where people could not...
Yes, young lady, know your place. Let me finish. I'm your better pleb.
Not mix with them because it's a secure area. You don't tend to get that elsewhere. So from a COVID point of view, I would argue it was not actually a bigger risk as having to work there anyway. But you know something? One of the weaknesses of Boris, and I'll be honest with you.
Get ready for this. All I say is, if you don't have a bucket nearby, I'll give you 2 seconds to get one, because the Bodge love in here is so pathetic you're liable to vomit.
Is that I think, you know, he's just a little bit too loyal to people who work for him.
So loyal he'll break the law, because that's the flaw in the argument. Whether you argue that taking matters into their own hands, they thought it was...
But let me just finish my loving of the Bodge. You've disturbed me again, dear. This is not fair. And he'll patronise her again after she's finished.
Okay, because, you know, it's a safe environment, whatever. They made the decision themselves, when actually they'd made a decision for everyone, including themselves, that what they were doing was against the rules. It was against the law. Can you at least concede that?
Well, we'll find out, won't we? Well, Sarah, you must try and let your interviewee get in occasionally. Well,
do you think he'd have said that to a man? Bet you anything he wouldn't.
The point is that it won't be... I can't concede it because it's not me looking at it. You know, this is the very, very point, whether it's against the law or not, that will be decided by Sue Gray of the Cabinet Office, and indeed, no doubt, the Crown Prosecution Service, because these were also key workers under the law. We'll have to see whether it was breaking the law or not. But what I'm just trying to get across today is that the view was... undoubtedly, that this wasn't spreading the disease because these were people who were already working closely together. So going into a secure garden is actually far more safe than working in small, cramped offices. As for whether it's guilty or not, as you quite rightly say, that's something that will come out in the next few weeks.
You're right, and that decision was taken, and that is the decision that will be explored, as well as other allegations of party. If the Prime Minister is found to have fallen foul of the law, if this investigation comes out against him and found that he did break the rules, should he resign?
Wait for the answer. Do you think he gives a straight answer here?
Well, that'll be a decision for him. It'll be a decision for the party.
Would you be amongst the ministers calling for his resignation?
Well, I'm not a government minister, Sarah Jane.
No, but as an I beg your pardon, as an MP.
And you're not a very... what's the word I'm after? I won't class you as a respectable MP either.
The backbench MPs, would you be with them in asking for his resignation? Because, you know, the lawmaker breaking the law, well, you can see the problem here.
I can see the problem, and that's why it depends on the nuances and the subtlety. You know, I don't suspect, you know, it's going to be quite as black and white. It may be, but I suspect it won't be quite as black and white as you seem to think. Well, we'll have to see. So I'm not going to...
I think I'll leave this here. I think we're nearly 15 minutes, and 15 minutes of this, of Mark Fabricant, is enough for anybody. This was just absolutely pathetic. I've never heard anything so rubbish. I mean, they're trying to say they're in a safe environment, so they were not going to spread the disease. So what he's saying, that these people who were working in number 10 Downing Street lived there constantly. I don't think they did. I think they went home. I think they had homes to go to as well. My God. Alright, I shall leave the video here because it's gone on long enough. And you've got other things you want to do than listen to this cunt. So, right, I shall leave the video here, and until the next time, I shall bid you farewell and take care.